Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. My name is Rob Martin. I am let's see if we got some slides here. My name is Rob Martin. I am a FinOps Principal at the FinOps Foundation. FinOps Principal, if you don't know, is like a junior high school principal, but with less vaping. I am responsible. I've been in charge of or developing a lot of our training. So some of you, I just met someone who said he enjoyed watching me in my bookshelves for 10 hours while he got FinOps certified practitioner trained. But now I'm working more, and I realize I'm standing off camera. Now I'm working more on our FinOps framework, and that is the topic of our next talk. And I'm happy to be here along with my friend and boss. So please welcome him, Mike Fuller.
Hey, I'm Mike Fuller. I'm the CTO of the FinOps Foundation. I joined the foundation at the beginning of last year, but I've been around the foundation since the beginning. And so got a long history with working with Rob. And so, yeah, we'd love to dig in. Today we're going to kind of cover the FinOps framework. Hopefully you've seen it before, but if you haven't, we're going to talk about what is it. Why do we even have a FinOps framework? The evolution that we had this year with the Technical Advisory Council at the Foundation doing some updates, and then hopefully convince you that you should be using it and how you should be using the FinOps framework in your FinOps practices.
There we go.
And so I guess it's kind of amazing to me to think that we actually have a little bit of a history now and that we can actually look back on the things we've done over the last 5 years. And if you think, for us, we look back on the framework itself, back all the way to sort of 2019, this capability architecture was kind of the closest thing we had to a framework at the time. And you can kind of see that the individual items in here are sort of a mix of capabilities you see today and individual actions.
Don't take pictures of this. It's the old framework. Were any of you at the first, I'm going to take us back to 2019, September 2019, San Francisco. Mike and I presented the first FinOps Certified Practitioner course. Were any of you there? Anybody here? Not as, yes! You get this microphone to take home with you, I think, or something. Thank you. There were 60-some people in that course. They were the very first people who got FinOps certified, and we have just come from this, which is largely a mishmash of different things with different words, to this beautiful, comprehensive, new framework diagram. This one you can take a picture of.
Hang on, you're on the right. Oh, go for it.
No, I can't. This one you can take a picture of. How about that?
You can tell we've also hired some designers in between the first framework and this one. So.
They have.
And so, this updates that happened for this year through the Technical Advisory Council really was to try and make the framework simpler than what it was in the previous rendition, but we also making sure that it's comprehensive to your FinOps practice. And so we also went through every individual capability and tried to look at ways to make sure that the quality bar of every capability you go to is actually up where we expect it to be.
Yeah, this was, JR talked about a lot of the new capabilities in the talk this morning. And so you heard about some of them and why they had been added. But this is really reflecting a lot of the connection that FinOps practices now have to the rest of the business. Right? We're no longer a group of people who are doing some reporting on the side, but actually involved in the decision making and how we're using cloud, how we're using technology generally in our organizations. And this is all customizable, so we'll talk about how to customize some of these things. But first, why do we even have a framework to begin with? And to quote our friend Vaz, words are important. Usually Vaz says words are hard, and certainly in the naming of these new capabilities, that came to pass a lot in our discussions. But we wanted to talk about each of the sections of the framework a little bit in detail.
So starting with the domains, I think about these as a way to describe the value of why you're doing FinOps in your own practice. And so I guess to sort of help explain what that feels like is, imagine you've just jumped in the lift with your leadership team. I know going into the office is something that we don't do as much anymore, but you've gone to the office and you've jumped in the lift with your leadership team and they're like, what do you do? Like, what is this thing that you do for us here at the company? And how do you describe that, the value you're offering? And so, I look at the domains as across the tops of them, you can think about the outcome that does for the business. And so we simplified the domains in the 2024 update, where we have joined a few of these deeper items that I think weren't really reflecting that true value to the business because they were still components of the thing that you're delivering. And so understanding cloud usage and cost stays as is because that is definitely a good benefit to the business. We've joined performance tracking, benchmarking, and real-time decision-making underneath this quantifying the business value. So now we've got a way of understanding our cloud costs and a way of quantifying the value of that cloud cost. And then rate and usage optimization. Originally, we had them in two different domains in order to sort of say, like, there's these two types of optimization you're doing, but I think it misleads a little bit that these things happen individually. And so we heard, I did a interview with Rich Oates from AWS earlier this year, and he really sort of emphasized the importance of doing these things in balance and making sure that they work together. And so this update in the framework really just highlights the fact that the goal of these two things is to say, hey, we've optimized our cloud. So we've got a way of understanding it, quantifying the value, and optimizing it. And in order to do those three domains, you need to be managing this culture, managing the FinOps practice within your organization. And so I think that elevator ride, you're prepared now. You should be able to just go through those simple 4 items and then get out of the lift and walk away with a mic drop.
And he should know, he's a mic. Let's talk about the capabilities a little bit. So the capabilities are below each of the domains, and this was one of the big areas that we changed in this revision of the framework. If you used last year's framework, or if you've trained on that previously, you noticed that some of the capabilities were in 2 domains. They were something that you did in both domains, and they would appear there on the website. Some of them appeared in 3 domains. Some of them appeared in all 6 domains, and that was getting a little bit confusing. So one of the changes we made, again, to simplify both the language and the concepts of the capabilities this time was to really give them one home. So each of the capabilities that are part of the framework, and this is all available on finops.org/framework. The new framework has its own sort of subsite with all of this information freely available to you. All the capabilities have a single home where they're most impactful. Now, you're going to say to me, Rob, cost allocation is something that I have to do in order to optimize, because if I can't see how my cost is being allocated, I can't optimize it. And you're right. All of these capabilities interrelate with one another. Almost all of the capabilities can be used as a part of achieving those business values, those business objectives that our domains really reflect. And so this is unfortunately a place where the framework is coming together, and we are trying to draw nice little clean square boxes around a bunch of messy little piles of stuff, because the things that we do in FinOps always sort of depend on our environment, depend on the clouds we're using, depend on the usage that we're doing. And so we're trying to create an environment, a framework that reflects that allows us to sort of look at things with a single home, with a single way of talking about them, so that we can engage in that communication and talk with one another clearly about what we're doing. And that's hopefully the experience you're getting at the conference today.
And then the personas you would have seen in the keynote this morning, but if you want to move, yep. The 2 big things that we did in the latest update is we created 2 groups of personas. And because we're seeing that the FinOps teams are now interacting with more stakeholders across the business and interacting with more allied teams within the business. And so there's a temptation to continually add more personas into the framework. But we didn't want those starting out in their FinOps practices to be hit with a wall of persona names that they need to start making their friends with. And so we've created 2 types of groups, those core personas that every FinOps practitioner is going to be interacting with, and then those situational personas where as your FinOps practice evolves and matures, you're going to start making extended relationships with different stakeholders across the business. And don't see these as like tier 1 and tier 2. They're just 2 types of persona groups that you're going to interact with over the journey of your FinOps culture. So let's look at the framework now, not as the individual parts. That was sort of the what the framework is. This is all the stuff. Let's talk about how the framework works together and how you can use this framework in your practice, because everybody's going to be using this in a different way. So what we've done is we've grouped together some of the interesting capabilities, and we've used our own interpretation of interesting. Hopefully they're interesting to you. Mostly new ones, and we'll talk a little bit about how they came to be and how you might think about them in your practice. And so I'm going to start with 3 that are really closely interrelated, and they are part of the quantify
business value domain, and they are planning and estimating, forecasting, and budgeting. So feel free to laugh at any of these memes. They are intended to be funny. They're not an official part of the framework. So feel free to enjoy that. They're not available on FinOps.org. Why do we talk about planning, estimating, and forecasting and budgeting together? Because they are all very closely interrelated and they're always working together. This is a great example of where having specific definitions for these different things that we do is important, because it helps everyone to understand when I say forecasting, I don't mean the annual budgeting process, or I don't mean the estimating process that I want my engineers to do, but it's actually a forecasting thing that's got a definition. It's one of the reasons we do the definitions, why we spend so much time on the words and simplifying the words that we do. It's why we have the focus project, right, to define better the columns and the data fields that we were going to see in our FinOps data. So as we look at these three things, we can see that they are all interrelated, highly interrelated, and very chatty between the three of them. And if it'll stay on that slide, there we go. But they have different owners, they have different triggers for action, and they have different cadences. I want my planning and estimating to be done all the time. This is largely something that's going to be run or managed by our engineering teams, because engineers are always going to be looking at if they've got visibility to their cost, they're going to be looking for ways to improve. How can I do this better? How can I do this not only for better cost profile, for a better carbon profile, or how can I do this for a better performance profile? And I'm going to be looking at ways that I can tweak my application. So I want engineers to be working on that planning and estimating function all the time. I want them to do it for limited scopes for their area of responsibility, but I may look at just the cost of trading out one type of storage for another, or one type of database for another, or one type of architecture for another. And as they start to look at that, they're going to be identifying opportunities, even proactively, for ways to manage their systems and build their systems more effectively. Forecasting, by contrast, is going to be something that is a commitment, a small c commitment, not a big C commitment, but a commitment from the product owner largely. And that may be an engineering person in some organizations, or it may be an actual product manager in others. But that forecast is the commitment that product owner is making to the business. If you give me this much money, I will deliver this much value, right? So I want that product owner to be engaged. I want them to be working with the engineers who are constantly imagining ways that they could do things more effectively. And I want them to be working with the other people involved in this, finance, who are managing the budgeting process. And they're the ones who are making the organizational commitments, if I stay there, the organizational commitments to say, we're the business, we're willing to pay this much money to get that value that you promised us that you would give us in that forecast. And so we see those processes happening. They have different owners, they have different cadences. The budgeting process will typically be annual, maybe with a quarterly update. The forecasting process may be something that we update monthly or even weekly in some organizations. And the engineering, planning, and estimating process, I want to see that happening all the time. It's an interesting way where these three capabilities, even though there are three distinct capabilities, are always working together in our organization. So we want to work on how we do that. There's going to be a couple of things, if you want to learn more about the interplay between these, there's going to be a Chalk Talk this afternoon in Rancho 1 that will talk about this exact thing. And if you saw Ellie on stage from Disney this morning, she is going to be on the keynote stage again in the very next session after this, if you'd like to hear more about how Disney is doing their forecasting.
And then two other capability areas we have is architecting for clouds and onboarding workloads. The interesting thing about these two things is, initially we were sort of working with attack and thinking about pushing these two capabilities together. But after unpacking this in deeper conversation with attack, we realized that there's kind of two different types of actions, and they have a unique sort of way they interact with the business. When you're onboarding workloads, you're thinking about the plan and aligning strategies with finance in order to get the funding in order to bring that workload in. And you might at the same time be architecting for cloud, or after the fact. Once you've got that workload into cloud, you might be reassessing your architecture. And your cloud provider might be bringing out new features tomorrow that would change what you're going to be doing in your architecture. And so we do see these as two separate capabilities, and they sit under the two different domains. It's important to look at architecting for cloud as something that you're going to do all the time with your engineers, and not just something that just happens at a single point in time, especially when you're just onboarding the workload in the initial place.
Okay, quick quiz. How many of you have moved all of your workloads to a single cloud? Raise your hands. Dave, you're not going to raise your hand for that one too? Okay. I didn't think so. So this is not a normal pattern, right? Nobody moves all of their stuff to one cloud and manages it there effectively. There is no one cloud application to rule them all, if you will. And that is where some of the new capabilities around licensing and SaaS are going to come in. So licensing and SaaS was a new capability that was added this year, and it really takes a look at the work that the FinOps team needs to do to manage this very big piece of cost, right? For a lot of enterprise software or databases that you may run, the cost of the software that is running on them, the cost of the licenses that you are paying to access that software may dwarf the cost of even the very expensive infrastructure pieces that are running that and the amount of storage that you're paying for to run that infrastructure. So this is a really important part of it. If you're in a big organization where you've got an ITM team or you've got a lot of legacy stuff in your data centers, you probably have an ITM team that you can work with. That is one of the allied personas that you can go and work more effectively with. If you don't, this is a really important thing for your FinOps team to work on as well. And more we're seeing practitioners who are joining the foundation who talk about the integration of those types of activities between the SaaS use and the licensed use and trying to integrate all of that together. It's one of the things that Focus is looking at adding later on. It's one of the things that many of the analysts have pointed out companies are doing, integrating their software asset management teams and FinOps teams together to get that value equation, looking at all of the different IT spend that they're doing. So an important new capability and something to focus on. Amy Ashby and Lindbergh Mautiano are going to be speaking tomorrow at 3:15 on SaaS and licensing. So if this is an area that is interesting to you, please take a look at that.
Cool. And then you would have saw in the keynote this morning this carbon-aware FinOps. We're seeing practitioners more and more looking towards saving carbon as part of their FinOps practice, not just saving money. So we've added a cloud sustainability capability into the FinOps framework. This is, in part, really just a signal that this activity belongs here in FinOps. You can start to bring this practice into play. We see a lot of early starters in this field sort of starting to form those relationships with their ESG or sustainability teams internally. Initially, just to start sharing some information, sharing that carbon data that you're getting from the clouds with the ESG teams, maybe starting some early alignment on some goals, and maybe identifying where some of those usage optimizations could be helping with the carbon story for the organization. This is something that we're seeing as a very early start. There's not a well-formed best practices that are out there, and so it is kind of the first time in the FinOps framework where we've stepped ahead of what's going on in the industry. You'll find most of the other capabilities we're hearing already happening. We already can see some really good, strong best practices, whereas with cloud sustainability, we see this as something we need to signal to the market that is an area that practitioners are interested in, but maybe they're waiting back. I find that with dollars for an organization, you kind of don't wait around to get told how to solve it. You get told fix this money, and you go and figure out how to make it work. I feel like with carbon, it's a little bit different. You're kind of asked to save it, but you're not sure how to do it, and so everyone's kind of holding back to figure out what the story is here. And so this is kind of a way for us to say, hey, let's start that conversation. Let's not wait for perfection, because I think we can make some really positive impact early and maybe figure out what those best practices are as we go along.
There's going to be a sustainability panel on this tomorrow if you're interested. If sustainability is one of your things, panel will be led by Natalie Daly, and we'll have members of our sustainability special interest group who'll be talking about this tomorrow in room A. Okay, let's talk about chargeback. If you'll all look under your seats, you will not find anything that I will be giving you. I apologize. But we are in a world where increasingly we need to distribute this cloud cost much more effectively, and we've got to work with finance to be able to do that, right? Showback is great. Showback is now a part of the reporting and analytics capability under understanding our cloud cost and usage. But chargeback is going to be really important in a lot of organizations. And so the new invoicing and chargeback capability has been created down there under Manage the FinOps Practice. And this includes now invoicing, so it includes a lot of the interactions that we might have as a FinOps team with our finance groups and our accounting groups, managing POs, managing the invoices as they come in, and understanding whether we're doing invoice reconciliation to understand if we've been charged correctly, if our discounts have been applied correctly. Sorry, I keep doing that. And so this is adding all of the interactions that we have with that key persona that we have to deal with in our FinOps practice, that we have to work closely with in order to effectively do this. Sarah and Chavis, who you saw on stage in the keynote this morning, are going to be doing a deeper dive today at 3:15 from Uber. It's a fantastic talk, and they are talking about their invoice reconciliation bots, which is an amazing talk, and if you go, you will be amazed. So I won't spoil it beyond that.
Cool. And so I think the big thing that we really want to have you walk away from in this room is that this framework isn't just something for you to read once or maybe read twice. It's meant to be a structure for you to build your FinOps practice. You're meant to be see it as literally scaffolding for you to define your own FinOps framework within your own organization, to copy these capabilities and to turn them into actual real items within your own org. And I think we would just want to spend some time talking through like what that looks like for a FinOps practice that has adopted a framework into their organization.
Yeah, so thinking about how you implement this, is anybody, I know there are a couple of you in the room who are FinOps professionals. I see Scott, I know Ron's in the back. The FinOps Professional Program is one of the training courses that we have for the foundation, and it is a certification that is, in my opinion, well worth the time and effort that it takes to get it. One of the things that we do in that program is we talk about this company, Sunbird. Sunbird is a woodworking, furniture building, furniture retailing, and furniture app store organization that has a lot of internal challenges. And we go through that as a business case. It's a fake company, in case you didn't know that. We don't talk about bad performance outside of that. Sunbird is a fake company that we use as a business case in that FinOps professional course. And we're able to look at them as a case study for how you might think about doing the kinds of optimization or getting in front of understanding your cloud cost and usage challenges with a real or fake organization. And so Sunbird, I'll use a couple of examples as we go through, but we have, in that course, we use the framework as a way to customize how Sunbird should get in front of their cloud spend and get a handle on it better.
So first thing to do in your own organization is realize you're doing these capabilities. There are some of these capabilities that just naturally you've done. And I think you saw Ali talk about the fact that she was an accidental FinOps practitioner. It's almost a lot of the people's story in the room that they start doing this stuff, trying to solve cloud costs, and then they realize that, oh, I'm doing that capability, I'm doing that. So first, figure out what are you actually already doing within your own FinOps practice. And then determine which of these capabilities are your focus areas. What do you want to get better at? Look at the measures of success across these different capabilities and figure out like what's important for my organization today in order to improve the FinOps practice and I guess the impact of FinOps on our cloud spend. And then determine which of these maybe not currently your focus within your organization. Maybe you're only just starting out and you don't want to start with too much. So leave SaaS and licensing alone for the moment. We'll look at that later. And to JR's point this morning on stage, you can't do it all. And the plan isn't to just check all of these capabilities off. But you're starting to understand what have we already got some experience in, which are the ones that are going to really help us, and which ones can I just ignore for the moment because they're not the things that are going to move us forward.
This was something in the book that was called informed ignoring, right? It's not ignoring things because you're tired and you're out of time, but really looking at what are the things that I don't have to spend time on right now so that I can get a bigger bang in other areas. And so, if we take a look at using the application or using the framework in this application, an example I might give for how Sunbird would do this. We're using allocation here as an example. I've got several things that I do as part of allocation, right? I do the business unit allocation strategy. I do a tagging strategy. I'm probably doing a shared cost strategy, right, for my organization. And these are all things that are detailed, if you see that on the right-hand side. On the right-hand side for you guys is the framework page on the FinOps.org website. Again, FinOps.org/framework has all of this material that you can take. We have a CC by 4 license, so you can download this stuff. Please attribute it back to us, but then you can customize it to your own use. And so in Sunbird, I might do something like we see on the left there. I might say, well, my business unit allocation strategy is going to be that I'm going to be giving whole accounts to my business units, and I'm going to be giving whole accounts to those applications. And so I'm going to apply the accounts, I'm going to charge those accounts back in their totality to each business unit. I'm not going to do a lot of shared cost management right now because it's not something that I either need to do because of the type of usage that I'm seeing at Sunbird, right? So I can make these determinations. A tagging strategy might be that I'm going to use one of my business units that's a really important user, it's a really important part of my business now. It was an acquisition, but they are really advanced in the way that they use cloud as compared to maybe my furniture manufacturing part of the business or the retail stores. And so I'm going to use them as an example. I'm going to have a goal of getting 100% of my accounts tagged, and I'm going to have a goal of getting more of my resources tagged over time. And even writing down something as simple as 3 or 4 bullets about how you're planning to do your allocation can be really enlightening for the whole organization. It's something that you can show to people and say, these are the goals that we're going for, and this is the general way that we're going to do it. It informs engineering about what your expectations are of them. It informs finance of what they can expect from the data that they receive, and it really helps to organize what's going on. And it uses sort of Cunningham's law, right? Which is the idea that if you have something, if you want to get the correct answer, the fastest way to do that is to publish the wrong answer on the internet. It's always nice to be able to put out a policy that says, this is the way we're going to do shared costs, and have somebody go, no, we can't do that because we've got this pile of shared costs we need to allocate over here. That's great information to have, and it starts that conversation going and better collaboration. So using the framework is great here. Yeah.
And I guess maybe to make this real, you should be copying this into your SharePoint, into your Confluence pages, into whatever your organizational wiki is. And in my previous life, I worked for Atlassian as the tech lead for their FinOps program. We had a copy of the FinOps program in their Confluence pages. And then I changed the things where it says, persona A should be doing this activity to that team over there, linked to the team, should be doing this activity using that tool over here, linked to the tool. Because it turns it from something that is a scaffold into something that's an actual real action. And something like the tagging strategy should be, here is our tagging policy that everyone should follow. Here are templates that you should be using when you're deploying infrastructure out on the cloud. And so you're turning things that are concepts in the FinOps framework on the FinOps.org website into actual processes and practices. And then I always used to say to my teams that if we're doing something that is classified as FinOps activities, but I can't point to our framework where that actually comes from and why we're doing it, then we need to be filling that out. Like, it should be relatable to everything. And the benefit there is everybody understands why we're doing things and where to do it and how to do it.
Right. And that really tells you, that really helps you inform as well what maturity you need to be operating at, right? The framework description, again, on the right, also describes the different levels of maturity that you might expect, or the different activities that you would connect with that level of maturity in a capability. So it talks about the things that you would see at a crawl level. And if those are things that you can get away with in your business, that's great. Then you can use these things and really kind of operate at that level of maturity in your organization. And like Mike said, it's also going to include the functional activities that detail who's going to be doing what, which personas are going to be doing which activities with which tools, and it provides a lot of examples of how to do that.
And then these are just what I would expect to see in this capability if you had maturity in that capability at your organization, but it's not the complete list. It's not completely exhaustive. You are able to innovate in this space here and add your own functional activities to your framework, add your own extra things that you would like to see, and add extra sort of flavor, if you will, for all the areas. And as you integrate more of those allied personas into your group, you might actually start bringing extra functional activities you're expecting in this area.
Yeah. And
so we always say that FinOps isn't all about saving money. And I think a lot of FinOps teams start out with a big bucket of money. And I get it, like it's just about sort of saving. You kind of get to convince the leadership that we hire a few people, or maybe I transitioned into this role, I can feed back some savings. But every one of the FinOps framework capabilities has a measure of success, like I said, and not all of those are actually about saving money. They might be improving the percentage of allocation that we have, or getting our forecasting to be tighter. And so you should be looking at the value of your FinOps practice, not just as that bucket of money, but all the areas and all the ways that you're actually helping your organization. And so look at these measures of success across the capabilities that you're actually focusing on and start to set some targets for each and every individual one of them, especially those ones that you're starting to pay most attention to, those green ones that I looked at earlier. Figure out what are you going to do, like how much are you going to improve? And then for the ones that you're not going to be focusing on, set some expectations of what impact that's going to have, because that can actually start some conversations with leadership about we're not going to focus on this area, so we might see this metric drop back a bit while we focus on these metrics over here and drive those up.
Yep. So, oh, that's me. Surprise. So we have these different measures of success largely because going back again to the persona discussion, we have all these different personas that we are working with, right? We need to be able to communicate in the language of the different people who we're dealing with. And so, as an example, at Sunbird, we might say we're going to capture R&D costs separately for the CFO because that's going to be an important thing that we need to keep track of for our accounting treatment of R&D costs or a tax treatment of that. For the CIO, we may need to look at the ways the different business units work with cloud and have differentiated ways that we talk to those people. Any of you who are here for the last talk in this room, Vitor from Duolingo talked about the need to communicate using a daily average user KPI with their engineering teams in order to help them to understand who is going to be using the system on different days and what patterns and how they needed to adjust their infrastructure to do that. So communicating to the CIO organization, communicating to procurement about what you're planning to use, all of those communications are going to be different. And so we need to have different measures that we're managing in the FinOps team, again, to balance out the things that are going to be most important at any given time.
Yeah, and so I guess this is really the point that we're trying to take from this session today, is that I'm hoping that I hear at the next year's FinOps X, all of you have gone home, you've copied this framework into your own SharePoints and wikis, and you've started to build that out. You've fleshed it out, and you feel like now you've got your own FinOps framework that really anchors the FinOps practice within your own organizations.
Yeah, and we need your help as you do that. So this is the call for action for all of you who are going to take this framework concept home to your businesses. Please help to make the framework better. There are a few ways that you can do this. The TAC is our Technical Advisory Council, was highlighted in the keynote this morning by JR. Please find one of them. They are wearing, we're not wearing our lanyards. They're wearing lanyards that are dark blue in color, and so you can find a governing board and TAC with those lanyards around. If you spot one of them, talk to them about what you're finding useful in the framework. Talk to them about what you'd like to see in the framework next year. We're going to make this revision of the framework an annual event. Please don't worry, we're not going to make as big a set of changes as we did this year. But we want your impact or your involvement in making that happen. So talk to the TAC. They're the ones who largely approve what we're doing. Come to our community calls. If you're invited to community calls, we'll be doing more of those in the second half of this year. That's an opportunity for you, again, to talk to one another more virtually and talk about specific topics that are of interest to you. So if you're doing something, you're finding problems, or you're seeing things that are working really well for you, come to the community calls and talk about those things. And last, use the make a suggestion button. You'll find that on almost every page of FinOps.org, where it's asking you to get involved in that in the process as well. This is a framework that is built from the practices that you are doing in your FinOps organizations around the world. So please continue to contribute what's working for you, what needs to change, and what needs to be added.
Best way to find what you're doing that's missing in our framework is if you're copying that and identifying things that are not fit into the framework. And so we really, this year we really tried to pull all of the activities from adoption all the way through into the framework. And so I would love to figure out what we're missing, because I'm sure there's things you're doing that we might be missing in our framework. And the benefit of all of this stuff and everything we've done from day one is trying to share the knowledge of one practitioner to the many, and avoid us all having to figure out our own paths through this story of FinOps.
Right. Okay. And that is the framework in 38 minutes. So thank you all for coming. We've got 6 or 7 minutes. If you'd like to, if any of you have any questions, we'd be glad to take those. Yes.
I'll bring the box down.
Do you want to go back a slide, Rob?
There we go. And I really tried to make this a QR code for the Rick Astley video, but I was not allowed to do that. So you will actually link in with me if you click on this. I'm sorry.
So I see frameworks produce a lot of management process around the organization. You see FinOps, the owner of the process, to enforce the process across the organization, or if the organization is an agile practice, how do you put those processes or those best practice or to every agile release team follow those practices? How do you enforce this framework across the organization?
Yeah, so the framework itself, I would say, lives with the FinOps team, but the policies and processes that you're linking into would be collaboration between different teams across your organization. So when it's an agile practice thing, then you'll be really wanting to build that collaboration with the persona of engineering in order for them to feel ownership. I think if you go in there and going, oh, guess what, this is the new way you're going to be deploying everything next week, they're going to tell you where to go. And so the point here is to show, build the framework pages to sort of show the value of why having that governance policy in place would actually be for the organization and the measure of success that you're trying to move forward, and in order to then sort of demonstrate why we want to open this conversation of setting up a governance policy. Now, I'm making it sound like that's really easy, but that inter-team relationships is what FinOps is all about, like building that friendship, building that shared understanding, and trying to make sure that everyone is playing in FinOps, like JR was saying in this morning's keynote.
Any other questions? No?
One.
Here's one. Okay.
So I think the overall, all the revisions to capabilities, domains, I think it makes it more comprehensive and easy to use. One of the things that I've been doing for a while now is like kind of taking these capabilities, prioritizing across the capabilities in our FinOps team roadmap. I was wondering whether you had any thoughts on like, whether that's part of the framework in your opinion. Like how do we like kind of maybe even stub out some like best practices for prioritizing across capabilities, like where are you at in your overall FinOps practice, and like maybe this is like subset A of capabilities you should focus on at crawl, and this is subset B for walk and things like that.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about like, I guess like groups or like priorities of capabilities, and I think it is going to be one item that we can review heavily in the next refresh. I think that they're, I guess talking ahead, and it probably won't be exactly how I say it because, everything doesn't just work how you say, but I think there might be a concept of at least some core capabilities that are like every FinOps practice just has to have these. And there's some pretty obvious ones like allocation. Like if you can't allocate the cost, you can't really move things forward. Reporting and analytics, probably likely if you can't see. So I think there is definitely some clear items there that we could be like, okay, let's at least signal that these are needed. And then I think the extension of that then would be like, what traits do you look for in order to determine you might need this capability for some of the others? But yeah, there's definitely some feedback there, and we'd love to. That's the type of like collaboration we'd love to hear from community because. In order for us to get the next refresh right, it really just comes down to more and more conversations throughout everyone in here in the room.
Yep. If any of you have been on the website before, you may have seen the Adopting FinOps framework, the Adopting FinOps playbook that was on there. That document has recently been refreshed, and so there's a new version of that out today. I think it
should be launched today. Yeah.
Should be launched today. So if you check out on FinOps.org, look for the Adopting FinOps. There is some stuff in there about what are the first things you should do. I brought this screen back up because this is largely a list of things. If you look at the items in green, these are usually some of the capabilities that an organization just starting in cloud would focus on first, right? I need to understand what I'm using in allocation. I probably am going to focus also a little bit on reporting and analytics. I need to be able to plan and estimate because I'm launching things into cloud right now as we speak. I need to be able to forecast in some way. I need to rate optimize, likely I need to make that first RI or savings plan purchase, and I need to educate and enable my organization. So this was not just a sample example, but this is something that we've seen and was in the previous Adopting framework as a set of capabilities that a lot of people start off with. How you build from there, though, really does depend. I'm famous for saying it depends, I'm sorry, but it does depend on your environment, your organization, the type of cloud you're using, and so forth. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Anything else?
One more.
Okay. We're not going to get to test out his throwing arm. Thank you all for coming. Lunch is next, and we'll be back in an hour.
Thanks for watching. Check out more FinOps X 2024 content on our YouTube channel on the 2024 playlist. Support our channel by liking, subscribing, clicking the notification bell, and by leaving comments and questions for our speakers. We appreciate your support.